spicy wine. If you've ever wondered whether the wine that Romans drank was the same as the wine that we have now, well, it looks like your questions will soon be answered. A study that was published in January of 2024 has examined Roman clay jars called dolia that were used for making, fermenting, and storing ancient wines. By comparing these ancient vessels to modern wine containers, researchers have gained new insights into the flavors and processes of Roman winemaking. Dolia were porous and egg-shaped containers that were partially buried and sealed during the winemaking process. This method, along with natural yeasts, apparently gave the wine a slightly spicy taste and the aromas of toasted bread, apples, roasted walnuts, and curry. But then again, all the wine experts now can taste all kinds of junk in modern wine, like berries and chocolate and wood, and frankly, it all tastes like wine to the rest of us. The study also explored whether Roman wine was red or white, a long debated topic, and researchers found that unlike modern white wine, ancient winemaking did not filter out grape skins, leading to a wide range of wine colors, including white, reddish yellow, blood red, and black. Thanks to their well-designed dolia, the Romans could ferment wines with various flavors. However, more research is needed to further understand these ancient winemaking techniques, and then perhaps we will all finally be able to sleep at night when we know for sure what ancient wine tasted like. Number 9. Fortification in Saudi Arabia. Archaeologists have discovered a large ancient fortification around the Khaybar oasis in the North Arabian desert. This is one of the two biggest fortifications in Saudi Arabia. These, like the Khaybar, have been home to humans for between 4,000 to 5,000 years, and these small green areas in the desert, with that rare but essential freshwater source like an underground river, become sanctuaries for plants and animals. Human-made aquifers and channels help to irrigate the areas, making them suitable for long-term living. Scientists have revealed the fortification, which had walls that were once 14.5 kilometers long and 1.7 to 2.4 meters thick. They were also up to 5 meters high and enclosed with about 1,100 hectares. Based on radiocarbon dating, the walls were built between 2250 and 1950 BCE. Today, less than half of the walls and 74 bastions remain. Many walled oases date back to the Bronze Age and have been found in northwestern Arabia. These fortified settlements were huge and were similar to European megaforts from the same period. The Arabian deserts have some of the oldest fortifications in the world, like the citadel of Aleppo in Syria that has been inhabited for 4,500 years. Stuff out there in the desert really is pretty old. Number 8. Ancient Roman Arm Guard. Being an archaeologist is definitely not a job for the impatient amongst you. It mainly involves sitting in a muddy ditch, rubbing stuff with a toothbrush, or apparently doing some of the most difficult and tedious jigsaw puzzles ever. And there's not even a picture of the finished thing to follow. For the first time in 2,000 years, a Roman arm guard has been fully reconstructed out of dozens of fragments. The brass armor was discovered in 1906 at the ancient Roman fort of Trimontium near Melrose in the Scottish borders. Found in over 100 pieces, some with leather straps still attached, it has been part of the National Museums of Scotland collection for more than a century. And nobody could face getting it out of the box and fiddling about with it until now. Conservators in Edinburgh recently spent weeks piecing together the fragments. They are a patient bunch, and as a result, they now have the most complete example of a Roman brass arm guard. The arm guard was both protection and a status symbol for the Roman legionary who had worn it. Initially thought to be the body armor or thigh guard, its true function as an arm guard was only recognized in the 1990s. The armor would have covered the soldier's shoulder and extended down to a metal piece protecting the hand, possibly inspired by gladiator gear. Although quite how it ended up in just so many tiny little pieces, well, that's anyone's guess. Number 7. Ptolemaic Roman treasures in Al-Banasa. Next up, we have even more stuff being discovered in Egypt. It's basically like a big sand pit that's stuffed full of all the abandoned junk of all the ancient civilizations and things that are uncovered every day. This time we have some old junk from the Ptolemaic and Roman empires. These discoveries include tombs, as well as all the usual mummies and coffins and golden masks and terracotta statues that you would expect to find in this part of the world. These burials are from two distinct eras, the Ptolemaic, which was between 305 and 30 BC, and the Roman, which was from 30 BC to 641 AD. These things offer archaeologists some new insights into the unique burial practices and artistic endeavors from these historical periods. Number 6, oldest ruins in Denmark. Earlier in 2024, a group of archaeologists found a 2,000-year-old iron knife with what could be Denmark's oldest runes. The 3-inch blade has engravings that say Herilla, which means small sword in Old Norse. It was apparently labeled. Perhaps its original owner was being funny, or maybe they just weren't so bright. It's thought that the knife might date back to around 150 AD. Finding these ruins is significant because they are the oldest that have ever been found in Denmark, and they even predate the famous Jelling runestones by about 800 years. A similar ancient runic artifact, a bone comb with the word harja, meaning warrior or comb, was found in 1865 near Odense and is now at Denmark's National Museum. It seems that even ancient Norse people enjoyed obvious labeling. Just imagine what they would have done with a label maker machine. Number 5, early medieval money. After peering at old coins for decades, a group of archaeologists have finally come to some conclusions. Although it was previously unknown, they finally answered the question of where most of the silver used in Anglo-Saxon England had come from. Between 660 and 750 AD, there was a massive surge in the use of silver coins in trade, and it had long been puzzling archaeologists as to where it had come from. But apparently there is now enough evidence to determine it was actually Byzantine bullion that was being used in that era. It's all fascinating, I'm sure. Number 4, bronze jewelry. An excavation of a dried-up old lake in Poland uncovered 550 bronze artifacts and skeletal remains from over 3,000 years ago. These items have been linked to the Chelmno group from the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age and seem to indicate that they practiced rituals involving burial and metal offerings in large bodies of water. Most of the artifacts that were found were arm and neck jewelry. The remains of 33 people seem to have been placed into the lake before the metal items, indicating that burials had preceded the other rituals. This discovery has significantly changed archaeologists' views of the Chelmno group. They consider it a key finding for understanding the ritual activities of the Lusatian period in Poland, which shows that we are always learning and making new discoveries about the history of the world. Number 3, mysterious inscription deciphered. In yet another thrilling installment of Archaeology 2024 style, we have a bronze statue that was discovered all the way back in the 19th century. Apparently, nobody could, or could be bothered, to read the inscription on it, and someone finally did. So, this is a bronze Sphinx statue that was actually stolen from some European count in 1848. I'm guessing that he had probably half-inched it himself at some point, unless he was a direct descendant of the Kingdom of Dacia and had inherited it through the familial means, but he had not. Anywho, someone had drawn a picture of it or something, and so that's how the inscription was finally read. And it was super exciting to discover that it said, "Lo, behold, worship, here is the Holy Lion." How life-changing is that? Number 2, time capsule of prehistoric woodland. A buried prehistoric woodland has been discovered on Exmoor. The remains of trees and insects from the Neolithic and Bronze Ages have been found preserved in peatland at Alderman's Barrow Allotment on a National Trust estate in Somerset. This discovery was made during a year-long peatland restoration project, which included building leaky log dams to slow water flow, improve water quality, reduce carbon emissions, and preserve archaeology. It's all very worthy environmental stuff. The preserved remains give us a look at what the landscape and species were like in the area, all the way back when the peat had formed, with plants and insects similar to those in wet woodland areas today. Samples were taken at intervals to create 1.5-meter deep sequences of peat, which was then analyzed in a specialist lab, and amongst the findings were fragments of a beetle that lives in damp conditions and remains of dung beetles, rove beetles, moss mites, and water scavenger beetles. Woodland floor remains from 4,500 to 3,500 years ago included trunks, branches, and twigs of trees like alder and willow, with birch seeds indicating nearby growth. Other remains date back to the beginning of the Neolithic age, showing sedges, rushes, birch, and oak, and many experts have been pretty excited about all that stuff, saying that being able to connect the area to its past helps them to work out the future landscape management for the entire region. Number 1, 4,750 Stone Plaza in Peru. This is a megalithic plaza in the Cajamarca Basin of the northern Peruvian Andes. It dates back to around 2850 BCE, which was during the late pre-ceramic period, and has only recently been discovered. It was apparently built with large standing stones, which is a method that had not been seen before in the Andes and is quite different from other circular plazas in the area. It turns out that this particular plaza was built 100 years before the Great Pyramids of Egypt, at around the same time as Stonehenge, and it was probably used as a gathering and ceremonial place for some of the earliest inhabitants of the area, who were mainly hunters and gatherers and had just begun farming and domesticating animals at that time in history. The plaza has two concentric walls, about 18 meters in diameter, and the late pre-ceramic period was a time of social and economic change in the Andes, where the coastal communities were not yet full-time farmers, but were engaged in complex exchanges with fishing communities. Inland groups grew some crops but still relied on hunting and also traded marine products, and the builders of the Calakmul Plaza in the northern highlands may have begun experimenting with agriculture while remaining mobile hunter-gatherers. And so it seems that this architecture is a reflection of a society that was in the middle of some major changes in social progress. The archaeologists at the site think that the construction of the plaza may have involved some significant collective efforts and events that helped to shape group identities. This shift in architecture reflects broader social changes, moving from small group-based beliefs to more collective and regional practices, similar to developments seen at sites like Göbekli Tepe elsewhere in South America. Well, that's all for today's Adventures in Archaeology. Which of these thrilling discoveries has you leaping off the couch and heading out to dig a hole in your backyard in search of a long-lost treasure? Go on and let me know all your splendid thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, be sure to check out all the other cool stuff that's showing up on the screen, and I will see you next time.